Thank you for joining me, sir.
Well, thank you for having me today, Riley. I'm glad to be with you.
Absolutely. A lot to talk about, starting with illegal immigration. What do you make of this huge contrast between the number of illegal border crossings under Biden and what we're seeing now under President Trump?
Well, I think to your wonderful point, when the president gave his joint address to Congress here just a couple of weeks ago, he made the statement that the previous administration continued to say week after week after week that we needed to pass new immigration laws. We needed to do more to expand our immigration laws and various things. And then he turned around and said what I thought was probably one of the greatest lines of the night. It turned out we didn't need new laws. We just needed a new president. And I think that he was spot on. And I think, as you have reported here today, the numbers of people that are having to be dealt with at the border crossing has dropped significantly. It's unfortunate that the biggest challenge that we face right now are these rogue judges that are trying to step in and impede the progress that President Trump is already making.
Absolutely. And just on that note about progress, it's really impressive to me to see the urgency here, because since President Trump has taken office, we've seen more than 113,000 arrests, or around that number, and at least 100,000 deportations, according to a report I saw today. That is remarkable. That's extremely impressive to me. What do you think is really going on there, sir?
Well, it is remarkable, and I think it is exactly what I oftentimes find myself saying over and over again: promises made, promises kept. And this is a president that was fully equipped. This was a president that came into office knowing what he had promised the American people he was going to do. It wasn't his first rodeo. He had already served that first term, and he came in and with Tom Homan's help, and then Secretary Noem stepping into Homeland Security, it has just been one action after the other that is accomplishing what we've set out to do.
Absolutely. Now, to your point as well about rogue judges, activist judges, if I may, stymieing this effort and really trying to, in my view, protect the worst of the worst and violent offenders. We're talking about kidnappers and rapists and murderers. It's egregious, but I know that you're going to be speaking about this issue this week, trying to, combat this activism coming from these rogue justices and judges. What can you tell us about that, sir?
Well, actually, today we are in the midst of a hearing where the Judiciary Committee is actually in our subcommittee talking about this very issue. And there will be Representative Issa's bill that he introduced that really calls out these federal district court judges that are making, they are impeding everything the president is trying to do. And it's just gotten out of hand. And you've got one federal district court judge that issues an injunction that the entire nation is affected by. And Representative Issa's bill that's going to be voted on, hopefully, on Wednesday of this week, will make sure that we don't have that going on anymore. And we're moving in that right direction. And I'm very happy about it, because, you stop and think about just the power of impeding the power of the president. That's a real problem when you have the judiciary acting in such a way.
Absolutely you do. And it seems to be so political, not legal, which really is my big problem. It's judges, I think, stepping out of their lane in order to stop something simply because they don't like it. But that's the thing, sir. Just because certain people don't like what's going on doesn't make it unlawful or illegal or out of bounds for a sitting president, especially when it comes to enforcing federal immigration law. So I'm very happy to hear that. Now, I also want to pivot to something else that you're working on, the Free Speech and Fairness Act, which I think is really, really interesting. Could you tell us a little bit about what that act really means and what you're hoping to do with it?
Yes, sir. I'm very excited about the Free Speech Fairness Act that we introduced early this week. It is a bill that really goes to the heart of the Johnson Amendment that goes all the way back to 1954. If folks have followed that at all, Lyndon Johnson was a U.S. Senator at that time. There was an election going on in Texas, and he found himself, the polls were a lot closer than he wanted them to be. He got on a plane, flew back to Washington. The Senate happened to be debating a tax reform bill at that time, and he went in and simply issued an amendment that said that C3 groups, those churches, and those kind of charitable organizations would not be able to really speak politically in any way. And basically, it set out with that Johnson Amendment put in place that churches have really felt the brunt of that. Pastors over these years have kind of started to shrink away from speaking truth and speaking truth to power, really removing the first 160 years of our nation's history when pastors would call out leaders that for not following the Bible, for not living lives that would be exemplary in that way. And suddenly this cloud was placed over the pulpits of America. And what this bill actually does is it just really clarifies and codifies so that churches are not at risk. President Trump in his first term went after this and instructed the agencies not to go after churches in this kind of way. And so we're hopeful that Congress can take this bill. It's something that in the past, I know Speaker Johnson had sponsored it in a previous Congress. Majority Leader Scalise has been a strong proponent of it, also sponsored it in the past. And so I'm very grateful that to be able to sponsor this bill, and I feel like the environment is right, feel like the atmosphere is right, and we have a real opportunity to get this over the finish line and for the president to sign it into law.
Music to my ears, truly. I mean, we worked so hard to get this election going in the right way, and now that we have this incredible opportunity, we have to capitalize on that momentum. So thank you for stepping up, for building upon that, and doing really good work, because protecting the First Amendment is as American as it gets. And I'd like to think it's something we could all get behind, regardless of partisanship, but maybe not. So we'll have to see what happens, but I find that really, really interesting, and thank you for that. Now, I do want to pivot as well while I have you here, Congressman. The Trump administration, everything they do, every person they nominate, every move they make faces this intense, unprecedented kind of backlash from Democrats, from judges, and it almost feels like they just don't want to respect the outcome of the election because he won comfortably over Kamala Harris, and yet here we are fighting the establishment in D.C. tooth and nail. So when it comes to these bills to protect Trump's agenda and to sort of thwart activist judges and all of it, do you have hope and confidence that we'll be able to get to a place where we really can enact President Trump's agenda?
Well, I do have hopes, and I do have confidence that we're going to continue to move forward. Of course, I think all eyes of the nation are looking at these special elections happening in Florida tonight,
yes.
As well as the Supreme Court election in Wisconsin.
Yes.
We're all watching that as well. But I do think that the American people, when you look at the polling that we continue to see, and when I look at, especially in my own district in North Carolina, where we just had our teletown hall last week, and we had some polling questions as part of that. We had over 4,600 people that were part of that teletown hall. And then when we did the polling and asked some questions about President Trump's agenda, about what he was seeking to do and how he is performing, I mean, it was in the 75-80% approval range. And it was just really encouraging to see. There's no question the Democrats are in disarray. They don't know what they're doing. They're leaderless. They're rudderless. They don't have a message. They were hoping that they were going to be able to write the narrative that Republicans couldn't govern in the majority. We've proven that wrong time and again. So truthfully, all they've got is just to try to throw up roadblocks wherever they can. But I really think that we're just going to stay with the stuff, and we've just got to keep moving forward and move this agenda and get these approvals through the Senate as well.
Absolutely. Completely well said. It's really sad to see what Democrats are doing, because at this point, it doesn't seem like they stand for anything just for being anti-Trump and being anti-MAGA,
Right.
which that's the irony, right, is they think they're standing up to President Trump, but they're standing up really to the 70 million plus people who voted for him, who support
Absolutely.
him. So it's really just, it speaks volumes about the true motivations of the Democrat Party, which is just having power for as long as possible and having as much of it as possible. So we'll have to see what happens, in the coming days and weeks ahead. But thank you for all the work that you're doing in Congress, sir. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Riley. It's always good to be with you and appreciate what you're doing as well.
Thank you, sir.